firstly, thank you everyone. Really, really great to see the turnout. I think it's been 2 years. All of us have been seeing each other on Zoom. So it's actually very special to see everybody in person after a long time. And thank you, Ashish. Thank you, Varun. Thank you, Vikram. So I'm going to start with a small anecdote. And this was incidentally in Delhi. 3 years ago, I was meeting this global investor. And this was a investor who hadn't invested very actively in India in the last 10 years, but a very, very large fund. And I asked him, what has made you stay away? And he kept quiet for some time. And he said, Tarun, what's the acronym for India that comes to mind when I think about India? And I said, no, what are you talking about? He says, India, for a lot of investors who invested in companies several years ago, and those didn't work out because of some, issues around governance or, market issues or whatever it is, we changed that acronym to INDIA, I'll never do it again, right? And that somehow stayed with me, and I was reminded of that over basically what's happened, and Avnish alluded to that. So I'm going to actually start with that question because I think we have some of the, best founders building some of the most generation-defining companies over here. So first question from me, guys, is how do you react? You guys are building in the ecosystem. To the point Avnish mentioned, there's a lot of good happening, but there's also stuff like this that makes all of us feel a little bit uncomfortable, right? And we all are partners in this journey. We all want to make India proud. We all want to do things. We want our companies to be spoken about the way Google and Facebook and Amazon and all these companies are spoken about. So as a founder, what goes through your mind when you read this stuff? Talk a little bit about how do you all navigate these situations? We've heard stories where very often founders are negatively surprised, right? Saying that, hey, I had no idea some of this stuff was even happening, right? And so talk a little bit about what checks and balances, you all have put in place. What advice would you have for sort of, a lot of founders over here in the audience? So Ashish, maybe you can start.
This is checks and balances with respect to governance. And
governance,
but Tarun, seriously, I thought you would do some ice breaking, man.
No.
So who comes in throws a yorker, dude?
Listen, when you're bowling 3 people like you all, you have to start with that, no?
Please. Ashish, please. ये तो सलमान खान का वाला क्वेश्चन हो 40 से 42% के बीच में कंपनियां 10 कदम
I think governance starts at home एक तरह से when you can't when you are growing up, you have moral science, you have your parents teaching you that ki aankh ki sharam honi chahiye, there is stuff like भगवान पे भरोसा मतलब भगवान से डरो वगैरह वगैरह, right? I think it's a lot to do with culture and values at the very minimum. You start from there and you have to find out in your hiring, are you picking up people who would probably cut corners? The way we do it at OfBusiness is very simple. We try to pick people who actually have some degree of faith in them, because faith actually instills fear. And that is so grounded in people that you generally can't go away from it. I think that's the first thing, that the way you should instill governance is that you have to check for it, you have to instill it, you have to overplay it and stuff like that. That's one. And the second thing is what you can do as a company. First of all, I don't believe that as senior management and as founders, you can't do anything. If something's happening, it's right under your eye. You know everything. If you are saying that, hey, something happened, I was not privy to it, it's all. You are responsible as the senior management or the founder of the company for any wrongdoing that's happening, right? So what you can do though is to set up governing systems. For example, there are things that can happen automatically. You look for debt as an instrument. You look for credit ratings as an instrument. You look for internal audits to be done. You can set up processes, but at the very minimum, you need to have culture. You need to have people with the right DNA, people who are fearful of God, people who are, just who want a sound sleep, people who want to, really be in the right. And to be honest with you, that's 98% of the people, or maybe 99% of the people. It's when you are choosing or overemphasizing hunger, hustle, commercial ability, over these kind of things, as such things happen. So my mantra is very simple. You have to hire the right DNA. If they have everything else that you are looking for anyways, it's a big plus, but the right DNA is people who have those values in them. I think that's a very basic middle class value. If you look at the room, I think almost 90% people will have it, maybe more. And we'll have to just select out garbage at the time of entry. So that's my...
This stuff is weeded out by the team, and talk a little bit about that. How, you know, it's sort of self-policing or community policing in some way, where stuff gets weeded out. And second, you share everything very openly in a monthly. And what kind of environment does that create in terms of transparency?
No, so I'll tell you about us. I think Vikram attended our last monthly review, which was for close to about 95 minutes, which was attended other than Vikram, there were close to about 800 odd people who attended. Our team is about 832, I remember as of that day. So almost the entire organization attended. We actually published everything. Revenue, margins, where are the problems in the company, we talk about it openly and stuff like that. What happens, it's also apprenticeship. The reality is, if we overemphasize on certain values, I think people down the line take that as a cue and they kind of imbibe that kind of quality. I think it's also about picking people young. My sense is that you actually run a higher risk if you have too many people who are experienced in your company. You have to, I mean, India is a young country, and if you rely on youngsters to actually create your company, your relative risk is low. So openness, I think, is a hygiene thing. I think every company should do it, but recruiting at the time of entry to actually check for the fact that he has the right set of values, he grew up in the right set of way, he probably did not just mug up his moral science texts, but actually remembered them to build his academic and professional life is important for us.
I'll pull in Varun and Vikram also. Guys, would love to hear your thoughts on this, but also, you know, sometimes as investors, you guys have been exposed to some of the best investors in the world, right? Any best practices you can share with, there's a few investors in the room as well. Like, as investors, what can we do? How do we make sure that we play our part in making sure that, you know, this stuff, you know, doesn't, you know, happen anymore, right? So talk a little bit about that as well in your answer.
Yeah. I think personally for us at Cars24, you know, once an investor has joined the cap table, regardless of their size, position, how much dollars they've invested, we have never shied away from not sharing anything that they ask for, right? And secondly, giving them direct lines with the management. So it's not that if an investor needs some information, for example, right, that they have to always go through me. They can pretty much go to my CFO directly and probably CFO -1 and -2 levels as well. Because those guys go to those meetings anyway, or they sort of take them through that data anyway. And we have sort of always practiced this. I think when the senior folks in the company see that they don't have to run the data past me in terms of, like, you know, yahi data hai, hum khud bhi internally wahi discuss karte hain, you can share. I think that's something that I have always practiced. Again, to what Ashmo said, like, you know, I mean, there is only something that you're going to learn, right? It's very easy to, you know, become cynical that mera data share ho jayega and, you know, they will fund 5 other companies in some other parts of the world, etc. But jo hona hai wo aise bhi hoga. So I take the philosophy ki theek hai, jisko jo data chahiye, jo information chahiye, whatever they want to know, happy to share at any point in time. I think that ensures that we have nothing to lose, honestly, more to learn, and I think just from a messaging perspective, it sets a very strong example to everybody. Right? I'll give you another example. Right? Recently, so last year we had, like, you know, we tried to enter into multiple countries. So we hired India country head, India CEO, and Mohit from Sequoia wanted to spend some time with him, catch up with him, and Kunal asked me that, is there something we need to do to prep for this meeting? I said nothing, right? There's nothing. Whatever we discuss internally is what you go and when I told that to Kunal, he felt even better about, you know, ups and downs, and, you know, there will be highs and lows and challenges, but at least, you know, our core team and everybody feels good about that we are at a place where everybody speaks the same language. So these small things, just being fully transparent, honestly. Like I think the thing that we discuss internally is, or at least for me, the North Star is ki, when अगर मैं सो रहा हूँ और रात को मेरे ऊपर चाकू लेके खड़ा है, तो I know that there is nothing that I have done to that person, right? It's something else, but there is nothing that I have hidden or something that I have done. That's that's what's super important to me. That nothing that I have said something to somebody else and something to someone else, or there are layers of communication, etc.
Any concrete steps you guys have taken in terms of saying, listen, I want to run a company which is completely above board, right? And like you said, every founder knows, but as companies scale, the complexity also goes up, right? So maybe any tips, any concrete internal audit processes, stuff like that, right? Anything that you can share?
I'll tell you something what investors can do from what you asked. I think don't ignore. As an investor, you'll get variety of signs. Like in Delhi, लोग बोलते हैं set है, setting है boss, हो जाएगा. Those should actually, these kind of even smallish statements should actually make your antennas up that, hey, there may be something wrong. I think I'm an angel investor too. I talk to a lot of people, friends and family included, and I believe that we are in the habit of ignoring. सब कुछ अच्छा चल रहा है तो वो बोल रहा है जो कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. Beyond a point, if you actually read into what he's saying, will give you a lot of insight into the character of what the company is. And my only advice would be to investors to not ignore. Sorry, Varun.
No, I mean, there's not much left. Right? But I'd say, just to add on to his points, it's actually when times are good, that's also the time when you need to be equally active rather than when times are bad. And investors get active, they want to look at data, they want to sort of, get into MIS when things are not working out. And it's actually all the examples that you would see, and be it US, be it India, or any other country, and things have gone wrong when things were too good to be true. And because it was on your favor, and that's the difference between an independent board and an investor board. Where the investor board is themselves invested in this, and they are pretty happy that things are going. They actually don't want to sort of, jinx it by asking the wrong questions or pissing off the founder saying, "Agla round nahi lega yaar humse," right, etc. But that's the duty, right? On the board, right, be as independent as possible, right? Leave your invested interests out, and that's the same thing I believe. For example, I think I spent about 10 years in a company, and that's my second point, which is mindset. And that you have to run the company as a founder with a very long-term mindset. And because what you have created today is nothing in front of what you can create in the next 10 years. If you have that realization, then you would do things to ensure that those 10 years later, that output is amazing, and hence you will not cut corners. And if you work in any of the large corporates, one of the things that you are always told and trained into, कि number नहीं करेगा, कुछ performance नहीं आएगी, चल जाएगा. And अगर चोरी करेगा या कोई गलत काम पकड़ा जाएगा, right, next day निकाल दिया जाएगा. And that kind of sort of, clearly gives you a signal, right, that this is what the organization stands for. And if you have that clear signal when you're sort of talking and when you're sitting and saying कि number नहीं होगा, चलेगा. And of course हम पूरी fight मारेंगे. But अगर गलत काम हो गया तो sorry यार, right, chance नहीं है कोई, right, because बहुत long term game खेलनी है, right. So that mindset is necessary, right? And as a founder, you have to again separate yourself as the founder and as a CEO. And as a CEO, you report to the board. And you have clear fiduciary responsibilities in what you're reporting and what you're sort of, And similarly, as a board member, being an investor, and you should have an independent responsibility. And I think the points on culture are absolutely fair, which Ashmo said. And, but these would probably be some add-ons.
I'll tell you another one. So when I was a kid, I used to read a lot of these old news items, and I was a big fan of this entire thing around what Chicago police did in the 1950s. So till up to the late 1940s, US was almost like us, full of bribery, full of corruption, the police was and all that. So Chicago police did one simple thing. What they said is that we will take the lead of actually making sure that our city is clean. So what did they do? They did a very simple thing. What they did is they said, we will punish petty thefts. And they started with urination on the street. So everybody was put in jail for urinating on the streets of Chicago. Then they went into saying, okay, if anybody is creating noise on the streets, we'll put them in jail. What that did is that pushed the overall culture of the city to actually move upwards to say, hey, if they're punishing me for a theft as petty as that, they will probably kill me or they will put me to the gallows for actually doing something much larger. I think as a company, what we need to look out, I say, a lot of people talk about that we should celebrate our rewards. Go through Twitter. Most founders, most investors will be celebrating rewards or will be celebrating excellence, will be celebrating performance. But if you have a culture of actually punishing for the smaller things, what you will do is you will avoid bigger things. And I think that's what can be done at a much more regular level.
And not just, punishing, but then communicating also. And that's actually far more important, right? I mean, capturing that somewhere, be it in a town hall or in a wo, that, of course, keeping it anonymous, right? But talking about, we've got, for example, a COVP note which gets circulated every quarter, right? Where any such instance, right, it's actually captured and shared with the entire organization, and the decision and the action, the consequence of that is also shared.
But to your point earlier, that's what builds that culture,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Where you're not ignoring either as a founder or as an investor or as a board member.
Another piece of advice that I got in my early years as a founder is that when this dirty punishing is being done, you should not do it, you should get a legal head to do it. You should get a secretarial guy to do it, who's the dirty guy. I never did that. I always, when it came to punishing, celebrating was done by others. When it came to punishing, I always did it by myself. Because that's what I had learned from the Chicago police. Chicago police told me that the superintendent of Chicago is the one who used to announce the fact that you have a warrant or a theft. So if you are doing it by yourself, it tells you and your entire organization that this is the most important thing that you want to be taken care of. And to be honest with you, the organization that I worked in ITC, if you are caught doing something wrong, the senior most guy who has visibility to you, it sometimes could be the chairman of the company. He will write a letter to you. It shows that that's important enough for the company. The advice that you will get though from the ecosystem around you is that, hey, why do you want to get into the dirty work? Ganda kaam hai, kisi aur ko karne do. गंदा काम खुद करो तभी गंदगी साफ होगी.
Very good.
Excellent. Very well
Guys,
said.
I want to underline and highlight that please ask questions. We are just facilitators of this panel, and I know there are people here who will have a lot to add, but I want to underline this culture point. I remember chatting with Ashish about corporate governance before we were doing our podcast, and there's this famous saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and
Yeah.
I'm repeatedly hearing that the best check and balance you can have is culture.
Yeah. And guys, whoever wants to ask a question, the mics are around, so just put your hands up and I'll call you out. Okay, after that, Yoker is out of the way. Coming back to easier ones. So, I was reading an article, this was maybe a month back, and I remember it was about what does it take to build enduring companies? What does it take to build generation-defining companies? And there were 3 characteristics that article highlighted. The first is that these companies figure out a way to keep growing through good times and bad times, right? They obviously grow more during good times, but even during bad times, those companies are able to figure out and make sure that they're energizing the organization by continuing to grow, obviously with quality growth. The second point was most of these enduring companies or generation-defining companies suffered a period of gut-wrenching upheaval. Case in point, Apple. When they were churned through, I don't know how many CEOs in a few years, Steve Jobs, was asked to leave and so on and so forth, right? But the company survived that major upheaval. And then the third one was the culture at the top is to generate extraordinary shareholder returns over a long period of time. It's not an afterthought. It's an active, I'm hiring these 800 people, X 100 people. I want to make sure I create wealth, right? For all of them in the long term. and basically distilled down to these 3 insights. And that stayed with me. So I actually want to ask all you guys, and to the extent, who wants to start, please do that. But do you recall a period, phase, either in your sector or in your company, where it was a gut-wrenching upheaval, it was something really, really hard that you were able to overcome? And a lot of founders, they read stuff in the papers which is about unicorn rounds and multiple rounds and all sorts of stuff. From the outside, it looks like it's all been, up and to the right. But maybe share an instance or two if, whoever has something to share.
Well, I mean, of course, the last 2 years, and especially when it started, was absolutely gut-wrenching. I think, I still remember 10th March 2020 was our annual BP board meeting, right? And it's a big thing for us. We prepared for it for about 3 months. All the leadership team works very hard, prepares very detailed business plans, right? And then that board meeting is when we get approval for our business plans, and we sort of, get into action mode. And so entire team was fully charged, and we were like, yaar, ab to phod denge, we will have a great start, April, matlab, pale ke double kar denge, etc. All of those things. And 23 तारीख को रात को जो है मित्रों happened, and तो हम लोग रात को जो है 9 बजे शायद वो खत्म होगा, राइट? तो जो है 9 बजे जो है टीम की जो है कॉल होनी शुरू हो गई, राइट? सारे पैक बना के बैठ गए कि बॉस व्हाट डू वी डू नाउ, राइट? I mean, of course, when something like this hits, the first thing that you come across is, hey, it's happening to everyone, right? And पूरी दुनिया रुक गई, and you can also stop, right? It's okay, right? And everybody around you is also telling you mental, ये सब क्या हो आजकल बात कर रहे हैं, mental balance और कुछ बात हो रही है, तो ओके ये ठहराव का टाइम है, everyone is going through this, you can also take a break, it's okay, right, etc. right? तो हमने भी 3-4 दिन में बातें सुनी, and we were like कि ठीक है, मतलब सब स्लो डाउन हो रहा है, सब बंद हो गया है, तो ठीक है हम भी बंद कर लेते हैं, राइट? अपनी एक्सपेक्टेशन जो है बदल लेते हैं, राइट? 3-4 दिन बाद हम मतलब we woke up on the other side of the bed and we were like, what are we doing यार? हम लोग भी ऐसे सोचेंगे तो फिर how will we be startups and how will the other companies be incumbents and whatever is defined by that? And this was me and Ghazal, again doing this over a drink रात को, and it was I think 11 in the night, and हमने फिर we started drug calling our team, and we were like यार ये तो ठीक नहीं है, and they were also like यार हमें भी feel तो हो रहा था कि मतलब थोड़ा कि यार कुछ तो fight मारनी चाहिए, and then I remember next day I just told everyone in investors and around us saying yaar whatever action is happening now, right, just add us to that, right? Because warehouses are closed as we speak, right? So nothing can happen in our industry. If the warehouse is closed, manufacturing facility is closed, you can't service whatever you want to do. So we just said ki just start adding us everywhere, and couple of days later there was a group, and I remember Amazon was a part of that group, Big Basket, Flipkart were a part of that group, and I also got added as a part of the group because I pinged Hari also, and मुझे पता था ये तो कहीं ना कहीं add होंगे, ये मुझे अगर add कर देंगे तो कुछ हो जाएगा. And that group, suddenly there was a message which came कि Delhi Commissioner is calling e-commerce companies, right? So everybody on the group, we have to reach that Delhi Commissioner's office at 11 a.m. and मैंने गाड़ी निकाली, मैं चला गया, बीच में पुलिस वगैरह सबको मैं दिखा रहा हूँ, देखो मैसेज आया है कमिश्नर की 11 बजे जाना है, and it was like a large room. There was Amazon, Flipkart, Big Basket, the top grocery guys, right? And I was also sitting right beside, right? तो वो कुछ 1 घंटा बातें करते रहे. I kept silent, मेरे को कुछ था नहीं ऐड करने को, right? And in the end they just circulated a list, right? कि अपना नाम और फोन नंबर लिख दो सारे और कंपनी का नाम लिख दो, and तो we just wrote that, and after about half an hour they came. He said Amazon 100 passes, Flipkart 100 passes, MamaEarth 100 passes, and suddenly we were like, hey man, we have got. So just showing up, right, and having that attitude, and that you've got to see the glass half full, and as a founder you need to be the first one to do it, right? Because optimism, and you got to be the beacon of optimism in the company, and if you will see it like that, then things will start turning around you, is what we really learned, right? I mean, there's a quote by Artan Sena which says that you can cross one car on a sunny day, but you can cross probably 5 to 6 on a rainy day. And that's what happened really. I mean, in 3 months of COVID, and we actually tripled compared to what we were in Feb. And we were 3 times in June, and just by pushing the pedal and being optimistic and just being aggressive during that time. So I think it's something that we've also learned about this, right? But it's something that I would love to share with everyone, that it's just about perspective, and sometimes seeing some of these things as opportunities कि यार हम लोग तो बने इसलिए ना कि मतलब हमको तो risk लेना है. So
There's a quote, it reminds me, right? Somebody had written this: serendipity often disguises itself as hustle.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. Any example from your side, Vikram? Any non-COVID example or COVID example? Obviously, COVID was tough for everyone, especially in the auto space.
Tough times for our business are right now as we speak. So, a lot of excitement in auto in last 2-3 years has been modeled around Carvana in the US, which was $50 billion market cap company. Right now is trading at 10 billion market cap, right? So suddenly from people thinking, and this is at some level, it feels like, this happened to Amazon also long time ago, right? When people thought that Barnes and Nobles will sort of, win and not Amazon. But who knows what will happen in cars? But like I read stories about Carvana now where people are questioning whether online cars can be sold or not, right? And is this even viable or not? So for us, for 5-6 years, we built business with fairly low burn, like very little burn, right? That, capital raise hoya now will be fine. And then we obviously last year we raised all the money that we had raised in 6 years, almost like 850 million. And we obviously expanded our burn. I've been telling this to Ashmo. We tried sort of playing the blitz scale strategy. And now suddenly the world has changed in the last 2-3 months. And then we have to pull together everything back. Now we have all the money in the world in the bank right now to continue sort of playing the strategy. But I think what Mehul and I have realized is that I think we are not made for, like using poker as an analogy, you should know what table to play at, right? And not saying that somebody who plays at a super high risk table, right, high burn, super high growth is doing anything wrong, right? I think this whole journey of last 2-3 years have made me realize that I am not made for like ultra aggressive, super, crazy table. So now, and that realization has been painful because it's nothing to do with honestly macro. In fact, that realization would have anyway happened in 6 months here and there. Doesn't mean that we are not hungry for growth, right? But we just know how much risk we want to take for what kind of reward. So I think that realization has been very painful for me personally because I pushed the entire organization from being highly capital efficient and taking few bets at a time to taking 50 bets at a time and just flipped everybody over. And now for last 3-4 months I've been, and by the way, I started doing this in October, right? I started pulling back in October. It's nothing to do with what happened, but I just realized, I remember I was in Dubai and, I was on a call and I was like, I can't play this game. I don't mean game in a wrong way. I mean just, I just can't play this
Different strategy.
Different kind of a strategy. So that personally has been very, very intense for me. But in a fun way, honestly, I think this last 2 years, everybody, and especially when I do interviews for candidates, everybody says, oh, 300-400 million की company थी 3 billion पे पहुंच गई, you guys have done very well. I said, कुछ नहीं, forget the outcomes, right? The outcomes are not in your control. Input wise, life has just gotten way tougher. We have launched multiple countries. At the beginning कि आप try करोगे 4 countries करना, it will be tough. You go in with confidence, and when you decided you have taken that decision, then confidence automatically goes up. Once you start implementing, right? So, last 2 years, or especially last 18-20 months, have been toughest of the last 6 years, right? And this is the outside world perceives it exactly opposite. Exactly, they all think, wow, this company was like 300-400 million, have grown 10x in valuation, and I said for me personally, it's been exact opposite. It's been it's not been less, it's been insane. I have been stressed. I have gone on desert eating at midnight spree. I had to get a coach, but But you know, I think in the end it just feels like it's been painful, it's been challenging, it continues to be, but I'm glad that I've got this experience, right? And it's sort of sweet pain, right? It's still pain, but it's not pain that's making me decline or sort of is negative, but it's sort of, I hope it's made me positive. But it's happening right now.
Vikram, that is
Thank you,
our
thank you for
applause.
being so kind.
Thank you.
I think it's amazing. It's amazing. I'm going to come back to Ashish, but Amit, Chakri, Dilsher, I don't know who else. Anyone, please, I'm counting on you guys to keep asking questions. Anyone, by the way, Karthik, any one of you all, I'll keep going, but if anyone has a question, please just put your hands up. Anyone from the audience? Okay, so I'm going to give the next one then, and meanwhile, you all can see if there are other questions that come up. So the fourth tenet is of any great company is you can't talk about enduring companies without talking about how you manage talent, right? And I think your first answer, some version of what each of you said was, it's the culture, right? It's the culture. Now in this market, especially again what's happened in the last 12 months, crazy salaries, people giving BMW bikes, people giving all sorts of crazy offers, acceptance to joining ratio at probably the worst levels we've seen in the country. How do you keep a long-term mindset when you're managing your talent? When it almost seems like everybody else and everything else around you is the complete opposite. And Ashish, I know you've done a phenomenal job and we're just more privy to that journey. I'm sure you guys are doing something special. So I would love to start with you maybe and talk a little bit about that.
I think Rupali met me some time back and she said, we've chosen the build way. I liked it so much that I said, okay, I'll use that, which is the build way. So my belief is that it is very much more difficult to actually make somebody unlearn than learn. So we believe only in freshers. 95% of our organization is freshers.
That's super counterintuitive. Talk a little bit more about that.
So I'm 41 years old. I'm the
I think
third oldest
everybody
guy in the
wants,
company.
yeah, but everybody wants people who are more experienced, who have been through the journey to
Absolutely
help
not
them
at all.
build. So
I'll
talk
tell you the
about that.
advantages of it. I have actually spoken to at least 10 people in this room, other than the ones in the dais who have told that, come and actually talk to our people. Some people have done that. And I'll tell you the negatives later, let me tell you the positives. There's literally zilch attrition. If you take freshers, what will happen is, if you go to the same college, there'll be batch by batch by batch by batch. People will follow their senior batches. They will get apprenticed by them. पहले उनको शर्म आएगी, फिर छोड़ेंगे. There'll be zilch attrition. Second, they are moldable, they are hungry, they are hustlers. We go to tier 2 colleges, they feel that they've missed out. They don't have the fear of missing out. They've already missed out. They want to make up, they'll do anything for you. What we promise them, कि तेरा सारा खर्चा मेरा, तेरी पहली गाड़ी, तेरे पहले बच्चे का खर्च, तेरे घर में मेडिकल इमरजेंसी हो गई उसका खर्च, कोविड में तेरा खर्च, तेरा पहला घर, तेरा सारा खर्च मेरा, तेरे शादी का खर्च. You won't believe it. Close to, we did this math in Jan. 61% of our organization got married while in OFP. 61%. Wow. And I'll tell you, उसके बाद हम क्या बोलते हैं? तेरा सारा खर्चा मेरा, तेरी सारी आमदनी मेरी. You give your life, your blood, your sweat, all the fluids in your body, you join to retire. What does it give you? It takes out the largest cost on your P&L. The largest cost on your P&L is the cost of attrition. You have to train somebody again. You have to teach him again. There is a business loss. खर्चा सबका बच जाता है, धंधा जाता है तो आता नहीं. So we've completely built it through freshers. We go to 16 B schools. We go to 2 engineering colleges. And we've gone to these 18 colleges for the last 4 years. And 11 out of 18 of them for the last 6 years. I'll tell you the negative. Negative is it requires belief. For the first 3 years, you will have no output. Because most of those guys are learning. What we promise to them is first year an executive, second year a team lead, third year a manager, fourth year a P&L lead, and fifth year you're jobless because you will do something new at OfBusiness. Today, on April the 28th, We have 70 entrepreneurs, 71 to be precise, 71 entrepreneurs who just completed 4 years and they are jobless. And they're jobless. Somebody called me today, I don't know if it was Vikram or somebody called me and said, what are you doing? I said, I'm trying to find jobs for 71 people because they just got fired. 71 people having spent 4 years in the company, knowing exactly what we do, right? They are the ones who will create history. As long as you believe in them. What does it take? First 3 years of effort. You can ask anybody in this room who knows us. First 3 years we didn't create value because we were investing. We were not investing by putting in the marketing dollars. We were not investing by putting in capital investments behind machinery. We did human capital investments. 3 years, we did not expect anything. For 3 years, a lot of us, the 30 of us who are in that 5%, the 30 of us didn't sleep. Today, if we don't sleep by 9 p.m., they have a problem. You have to believe in them. The young India is here today. They need to be nurtured.
Talk about those first 3 years because, we obviously work with a lot of founders, right? And some of them are old, some of them are young, some of them are doing it, most of them are doing it for the first time, right? Now, there's almost this natural, gravitation towards people who've been there, done that. You want somebody to do marketing, go and hire somebody who's done marketing over the last 10 years. You want to get operations, go and find somebody who's done operations for 10 years. You've taken obviously a very different path. Right now, to your point, you have to be patient for 3 years. But it also is a super risky strategy if it doesn't work. Did you ever have that fear?
Ashish, layer in the Goldman Sachs, McKinsey homogenization point that you've made before.
Very honestly, this is not an invention that we did. This is exactly what all the organizations that I worked with did. He worked in Hindustan Levers. Hindustan Levers has the exact same philosophy. The last, I don't know the recent one, I think I read it 3-4 years back. The last 11 MDs were MTs.
Management trainees. They started
Management trainees. They started as management trainees, no laterals. He can confirm to that. ITC, exactly the same. You look at McKinsey, exactly the same. The problem with entrepreneurship, or for that matter, any new venture that we do, is that we are in a hurry. We forget what we have learnt in life. You have learnt enough. You just have to put it to practice. If you put it to practice, you've seen enough. Even if you're a 20-year-old guy fresh out of college, maybe even in your third final year, you've seen 20 years of life. Put it to practice. If you put your own learnings to practice, what will happen is it is your learning that you're putting to practice, not somebody else's. And second, if it has happened with you, it will happen with you again. So the thing that we spoke about here is exactly what we copied, blindly copied. McKinsey, ITC, organizations that I worked with exactly did the same. And for me, that's the only way of creating a business. Because if you take somebody from outside, he comes in with his own set of learnings. But if you take somebody who's fresh and you nurture him, you can make him the way you want. I know it's very counterintuitive. I think I remember initially telling it to my board members. They used to tell me, hey, take people from the industry. They will gel with you. Let's create a concoction. I always used to play to that tune. I used to listen. Never hired a single guy from the industry because I've had 2 from the industry in my first couple of years. They left themselves. It has its issues. It requires patience. It creates an old boys club. That's the path. That's the only path in my opinion.
Varun, Vikram, anything to add? Do you all agree? Have you all done, talk about how you all think about it.
I've never even thought about it. I've heard from him and I didn't even dare think about it because I guess I've moved on a very different path. But, for good or bad, even we have had no attrition. So, in fact, one of the things you were asking was on tech, right? Surprisingly, we have had no attrition in tech in last 1 year. Right? And it's not that we have sort of gone bonkers with salaries or given bikes or aeroplanes or helicopters, right? Nothing it's still still the same things that we were doing before. And I think for us, what has worked is that 4 of us were the co-founders, right? I think when we started, one of the things that, like, so for example, one of my co-founders and CMO, Gajendra, is my IIT Bombay batchmate. And we discussed with each other that, look, we are very close friends, right? But here we have to run an organization professionally. And how do we sort of deal with if any tough situation happens? I think the only thing I remember we discussed is that whatever happens, let's be respectful to each other and let's have genuine empathy for each other and like support each other through whatever we can, not necessarily professionally, but outside. So we are very aggressive as a company. Obviously, we try to do, like, one of the feedbacks we get all the time is that we just try to do too many experiments all the time, and work-life balance is poor and all of that. But I think one of the things that we try and work really hard on is to ensure that everybody feels respected. And I don't think that, you cannot be an aggressive company and sort of be disrespectful.
But Vikram, let me push that, right? I think every founder over here aspires to do that. The complaint we often hear is that the talent doesn't reciprocate. The talent is very short term. So they are optimizing for that 20%, 30% pay hike. They are optimizing for that extra perk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I'll tell you, like, people do reference checks all the time, right? And for all the hirings when we hired our country head in Australia, Olga, who's our country head, she called so many external, like, Cars 24 people, like, it was insane, right? And she heard good things from everybody. She said, like, it's too good to be true. Have you sort of prepped everybody? It's like, you reached out to them directly on LinkedIn. How do I even know who you reached out? Like, nobody called me back and said, hey, somebody reached out to you, etc. See, there are all kinds of people, obviously, who will optimize for short-term, fine. But you'll find enough people who want to work with a group of people that they really enjoy their time with, right? And that's what we are trying to create all the time in our organization, right? In fact, I remember one of the guys, like, when I was with Rocket Internet doing Fab Furnish, there was another guy who was at Jabong who I really liked. He moved through a bunch of companies, and then he's finally now working at Cars 24. The last company that he left, he said, वो मुझे 200% भी hike देगा ना, तो भी मैं काम नहीं करूँगा क्योंकि वहाँ वो इज्जत नहीं करता है, right? And you never know कि कल को how will you be, like, if you're not doing well, if something goes wrong, like, how will you be treated, right? So for us, I think the most important thing is, even for people who have parted ways, people who we have asked to leave, we have ensured that we have supported them, right? To the fullest extent possible, not just in words. For example, taking cue from Netflix philosophy, we've sort of said to people, भाई जब तक आपको नौकरी नहीं मिल जाती, we will keep paying you, right? Most people don't come and ask for it because it's a big deal for somebody to come and say, यार मुझे 4 महीने, मुझे 2 महीने के और पैसे दे दो, etc. It's more about your intent. It's more about your gesture. So I know I don't have like any specific thing that
what
we
you're
have
saying,
done.
over time people are self-selecting into that culture.
They are, like, tech में we have had like literally no attrition. अभी 2 दिन पहले मैंने पूछा उनसे वापस कितना attrition हुआ है पिछले 4 महीने में. Nothing. Like literally nothing. I'm like एक developer नहीं छोड़ के गया, right? और ऊपर senior level पे तो I have like my CTO has been with me for 4 years. I have hired another one, so I have 2 now, a global CTO and another CTO. When my last CTO left, he transitioned 6 months and he left because he wanted to start a company. So he got this new guy and helped him transition. My data science head is for 4 years. My product guys, because that's the first time we hired data science, my product guys are there for 6 years now. वो 2 बच्चे, they started from the beginning 6 years, अभी तक वही चला रहे product, right? And so for most of the other organization, my country head in Dubai is the guy who was there on day 1. So we have had no attrition at all. And people ask me, tech especially people ask me, like, there's no specific program that we created, कि tech के लिए program बनाते हैं, data science के लिए बनाते हैं, nothing. We just continue to follow this philosophy. There will be ups and downs. There will be people who will not do well in their roles. उस टाइम पे अगर आप उनसे इज्जत से बात, be aggressive, be demanding, be meritocratic, but इज्जत से बात करो, respect दिखाओ, genuinely care about them. किसी को 3 महीने का ब्रेक देना, उसको ब्रेक दो, बोलो भाई तू घर पे बैठ, figure yourself out, कम चीजें करो. This is not, like, you're just spending time with people like we really care for you.
Okay, I'm going to just pause there. Okay, I think Karthik, I know this is a burning topic with a lot of founders, so please ask the next level questions.
No, I have actually a different question. So, my question is one of the things I've struggled with as a founder is switching gears. Coming from corporate, you operate at a certain speed, right? But here, there are times where you have to do everything yourself. There are times where you have leadership to do stuff. There are times you conserve capital. There are times you burn money. How do you switch gears?
You wear a different hat every morning, yeah. I mean, and be used to that. One of the things that I also felt, especially early on, when I'd quit a job and started, was the fact that how varied your days are, and how, from interacting with vendors to interacting with teams to interacting with investors, and how you have to wear those different hats. And in fact, one of the things which I was sort of told by one of my mentors at that time was, before you get into every meeting, and at least have a 15-minute gap between the last conversation and the next one. And in that 15-minute gap, prepare yourself emotionally in terms of what do you want to achieve out of that next hour or day that you're going to spend, and hence how you should be responding and how you should be reacting and how you should be acting. And behavioral, but yeah, that worked for me.
I think Ashish, you wanted to add something.
So my answer is actually very different. I don't think you can switch gears. You don't switch gears as a person. You switch gears as a team. You have to have a team who's very complementary in nature, who have the ability to actually, demonstrate what it takes at that point in time. And you have to build a culture wherein, if that is the need of the hour, that team member actually takes precedence over everybody else. You cannot have all the qualities. When we perform, I'm today merely a spokesperson. But the reality is, what I'm good at is I'm good at sales. So when I see that risk management is the hat that I need to wear, I look at somebody else in our team, and there are about 40 of us. They're all freshers, who actually wears that hat better. And I know, and I have the deep respect for him. First, very objective knowledge to know that this is a time when risk management is more important than sales, for example. And I let him take the limelight. It is too much to expect of a single team member, be it the frontline guy or somebody down, to actually do everything. You can only deliver as a team. That is when you switch gears. But just putting a team together does not make it. That's step number one. You put a team together with complementary abilities at a very basal level. Second, you need to have the culture that if that is the need of the hour, that team member needs to take precedence. And third, you should create an incentive system that he will speak up at that hour. So if you do these three things, one, build a team with complementary capabilities. Two, have respect for each other and objectivity, that you will know that you are not the person to speak up, but the other person can. And third, you give him the incentive and an environment that is fearless in nature. You will react as a team. Teams win matches. Individuals, games. I remember, a very old memory of mine, 1992 French Open. There was a big one. You just Google it up. This was Steffi Graf versus Monica Seles. I think Steffi Graf lost to Monica Seles 9-7 in 92 French Open final in the final set. The Sports Star headline, it almost is etched in my memory. It says, game and set to Graf, match to Seles and team. Well, it's a memory. It's an old childhood memory. You win as a team. It's too much to expect to adopt to individual things. Because we win because of our strengths. I'm a good sales guy. My bet to the person listening to me is that if you listen to me for enough, you will say, wow, I'm a sales guy. Can I be a risk guy? Maybe, but I'll be a very average risk guy. But if you listen to our person who's the risk management head, who's my way better half in, I have to say way better half in both personal and professional life, you will think, hey, the world is about risk management. If you listen to our ops guy who's a fresher, you will feel the same. You can't adopt. You have to have the sensibility to know that your team together will adapt. You have to build a team. So the question that you have to ask yourself is, have you built a team? If you have, then you have to think about, are you objective enough to realize it's not you, but the other one will actually adapt? And 3, have you created an incentive system and a fearless atmosphere that they can speak up? If they can, the world is yours. Too much to expect out of a promoter.
No, I think it's a brilliant point. Any further questions? I think somebody has a question there, Gaurav. Can we just give a mic to Gaurav, please?
We can hear you anyways.
Or you can speak up loud, either way is fine.
That you made, which, where you learned a lot and, which have been big teachers for you. So, anything you would like to talk about that?
Oh, so, frankly, I have made a lot of mistakes. I believe that this startup business, or for that matter, any new venture that you're starting, even at your home, is about 100 sonar ki, 1 lohar ki. You f*** the mistakes, bro. The question is, are you a lohar? Meaning, forget the 100. When you are beating hard as an ironmonger, are you heavy, hard, and can you do it with one stroke? I've made many mistakes. Vikram is sitting here on my board member. He'll tell you the number of mistakes that we made, even including today, is humongous. We went into services, we should not do it. We lent to people we should not do. We started in raw materials and geographies that we should not have. We built products that got wasted. But one thing that we did right, we did it right in a way that nobody could parallel us. 100 sonar ki, 1 lohar ki. I don't want to remember those mistakes. People say you can learn a lot from mistakes. I say f*** it. You have to ready yourself for that one big lohar stroke. You have to be a lohar. I have made a lot of mistakes, don't want to count them, so Varun should probably do next.
Well, I also very strongly believe the whole theory of you need to make mistakes and learn from it, or you need to go through really bad times, and that's the only thing. I won't wish that on anyone. I think you can do it without that as well. And of course, you will make wrong decisions. Right? I don't know if you'll call them mistakes. Right? It was a decision that you had to take. And you went one way, you could have gone the other. But like Ashmo said, when you recognize you've made a right one, and how persistent you are in just going behind that decision and building that out, and just differentiates if you're good or great. So I think, I don't know if I can talk about 1 or 2 or 3 mistakes, and there would be many. But I agree with that philosophy.
Do you see these mistakes as just like experiments and hypotheses that didn't work? Is that the mindset, and is that why you just don't let it bother you?
Yeah, I think there are opportunities to learn, right? You made a decision, you made it, right? First of all, let's all sort of agree, you made a decision, right? And that decision did not lead to the desired results, right? At that point, when you made that decision, you must have thought that geography or that, all of those were right, logical basis which you made, right? And learn from it and move on, right? But all of that, right, led to where you are today. So I don't know if I'll call them mistakes, right? Because that just means that it's something negative.
So just double click on that question, which is, how do you create a culture where, you've allowed yourself that this is how I think about mistakes. But what do you do when mistakes happen in the team, and how do you create a culture where everyone's sort of thinking like that?
You just stop them super quick. When a mistake is happening, I'll tell you, your entire body will feel it so. You'll have a headache, you won't get sleepless nights, you won't get good sleepy nights. People will come and tell you, hey, something is happening. You just have to react. Most of the time what we do is we linger on. I think the issue with mistakes, everybody learns from mistakes. That's hygiene. That's human nature. If you've done something wrong, obviously you'll learn from it. You failed in an exam, obviously you will want to pass it the next time around. You will go deep dive into it. That's not the issue. The issue is having realized from the entire ecosystem, including the organs in your body, have you reacted to it fast? I can tell you with pride that while we have made 1,000 mistakes and 2 good things that we've done, in every 1,000 things, you just fail very quickly. If somebody is coming and telling me, hey, you know what, I'm getting a headache, I tell him that, hey, it is not because you need a Disprin and there's something wrong with your psychological ecosystem, there's something wrong going on. Either at home or in office. Figure it out, just stop it. Just lingering on is what we need to. I don't know.
Gaurav, I'm going to underline a point here because as founders, it's a very tough journey. And I think what we are hearing is something I remember Ashish used to tell me, काफी feedback मिलता है वापस normally ना आशीष से. So he said, sir, देखो आपका पूरा leadership philosophy गलत है. So which was nice to hear. You have to, and he gave me a book. That book is called Strengths Finder. And then I remember at that offsite, he ran this session, which was about focusing on people's strengths. So look, a mistake teaches you what not to do.
Now play with your
It's success that teaches you what to do. You can keep making mistake after mistake and know what not to do, but you don't know what to do. So the key in our business, 60% of the companies fail. So actually getting that success loop going to see which is the ek lohar key, what is working, and then doubling down. And then just as a founder mindset and journey, it's a much easier journey than always worrying about what went wrong.
I think tabulating mistakes is a great book. It's a great book in writing. Read Ankur Warikoo, Do Epic Shit. He's made a career out of tabulating his mistakes. It's not great business.
Okay, I'm going to throw my last question, guys, and then I'm going to just open it up to the audience. So, 2021, very different sort of overall environment. Every sector saw 18 to 36 months of digital acceleration. I'm sure you guys saw it in your businesses. 2022 almost seems like a different age that we all are living in, right? Capital has dried up, overall sentiment is more negative, public markets have crashed. And I know you said, to the answer to Karthik's question, but my question is slightly different. Can you talk, just to again make it more real, right? What trade-offs are you making today in your businesses versus what you were thinking about last year? Because last year it almost seems like honeymoon period, nothing can go wrong, digital inflection, all that stuff. He's spoken a little bit about his experience on how he's kind of, thinking differently. Either of you all can talk a little bit about, like, how has life actually changed for you as an entrepreneur this year? Or has it?
एक चीज नहीं बदली. We had what we built as a corporate strategy 2 years back, and we are delivering to that corporate strategy today. And we build a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year plan, and not just as a company, but as all our leaders or our individuals have to work on H1, H2, H3, Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3 plans. And those plans, while are ambitious and aggressive, and are never what I would say things which would require unnecessary or disproportionate interventions which we can't sustain. Right? We are very careful about base. Right? You don't build a base on which you can't sustainably grow. And if you have to deliver and build a long-term company, then you should be as comfortable about your next year plan as you are, about your next 3-year and 5-year. And I think that's what at least we have done. We haven't changed anything in our strategy. Years can keep changing. 22 खराब है, 23 अच्छा हो जाएगा, 24 खराब हो जाएगा, 25. How does it matter, right? If you're building a long-term business, right? The years, quarters, all of that shouldn't matter. Your strategy should ideally remain same.
For us, there is a change. The change is that it's raining. Because Ayrton Senna said, as Varun rightly pointed out, that on a sunny day, you can probably overcome 1 car in the race. On a rainy day, 5 or 6. when the markets are down, if you have belief in yourself, you have the right team with you, you have that confidence that you can just go all hog, which is what we should have, or else we shouldn't be sitting here anyways. It's the time to double down. See, some businesses are such that you can't double down. For example, you can't double down in lending, because lending needs money, there's less of it, right? Structurally. But otherwise, most businesses can double down. I think for us, this is, I'll tell you, of some base, it's irrelevant now, of some base we grew 3.5 to 3.7x last year. We intend to grow 5x this year. We intend to. I mean, we may not get there. It's a dream. It's an aspiration. We may get there.
Of a much higher base.
Of a much higher base, because it anyways grew 3x. So the only change is to know, because Sena was right, and thanks to Varun for pointing it out earlier, that you should know when it's raining. It's raining. Barish ho rahi hai, bhago. Because then you can surpass. If not 5 to 6, at least yourself. If you're leading, yourself. If you're trailing, 5 to 6. He may have Lakme to beat. He may have Caravan up to beat. But this is the time. That's how you have to think. In my opinion, thinking of it as a downer is a passe. Nobody does that. Everybody's smart enough to say, hey, let me conserve cash and all that. And you have to run, boss. This is the time you have to run the hardest, the fastest, in my opinion.
Nothing to add.
He'll take
No,
it.
fantastic, guys. I think I'm glad we picked the topic we picked, because clearly you guys are thinking very, very differently. And that's what makes all of you all, what you all have built. I'm going to now just open it up for maybe 2, at most 3 sort of audience questions. So whoever was holding on, I saw 1 or 2 hands up. Yeah, please go ahead.
How do you plan for culture at different stages of the company when you're early, mid, growing, and I mean, how does it change, and how do you plan for the next leg of the growth, right? Maybe you need different elements in the company. I'm saying, how do you plan, and how did the culture in your company sort of evolve from early to mid to sort of higher scale with the evolution? And how do you plan for the next leg of growth from culture perspective? Does it change?
Evolve. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
In my opinion, it doesn't evolve.
Should it or should it not?
It cannot evolve. The biggest culture of the culture carrier of the firm is employee number 1, which is the founder or the entrepreneur. He passes it off to his next 10, who passes it off to their next 100 and stuff like that. I don't think it can evolve. It is who you are. It is who you are, and that will get passed on. I'll tell you in our example, sorry Varun to cut you short, but in our example, we have a very simple culture. You go to our office, there are close to about 150 odd posters. 100 of the posters, many of you have visited our office, actually have a very simple poster. It's called ABC. ABC. When I was a kid, ABC used to stand for Amritraj, Borg and Connors. The ABC of tennis. Amritraj fizzled out. This was in the junior tennis in the 70s, early 70s. Amritraj fizzled out, Borg and Connors made history. A for us is altruism. B for us is brotherhood. C for us is camaraderie. Altruism means wanting to help the other person. Brotherhood means when you are helping the other person, you think it's your duty. You're not doing it out of largesse. You're not doing it out of generosity. It's your duty. It's your brother. You need to help your brother. And C is camaraderie. When you're doing that, you're enjoying it. Because when it's in camaraderie, when it's a friend, you enjoy. We've had it since day one. Many people will have different cultural elements to it. It doesn't evolve. At the core, it doesn't evolve. It has to be put in. It was put inside you, unfortunately, when you were in your womb. You may have painted a little bit, polished a little bit, chipped a little bit, etched a little bit, but you are what you are. You can't change it. It's your job to cascade it down.
Sorry. I'd put it slightly differently. I would say the culture doesn't evolve. You have to lead that evolution by evolving yourself. And as a founder / CEO of a 10 crore company versus a 100 crore company versus a 1,000 crore company versus a company which is in multiple countries, and you have to evolve how you operate, because that is required. The level of micromanagement that you had earlier versus what you would have now with leaders who you can rely on, and will need separate cadences. You have to evolve those cadences. And the understanding of cultural nuances that you had when you were operating as a single country operation versus multi-country operations, you will need to evolve yourself to understand that. And the understanding of what can processes do at scale to ensure that you have sustainable growth, and while you were just hustling earlier. And you have to evolve to that understanding and drive it. And the understanding of corporate governance and the value that it brings, and is something that you need to evolve and drive, right? So I think every couple of years you need to ask that question to yourself, and that am I the right person to be leading this company? And then probably fire yourself and hire yourself again by doing an interview, and where you would ask the relevant questions and you have to answer the right answers as to what is required for you to do in the next 2 years to be in that role. And if you keep asking that and evolving yourself, that will automatically ensure that you're evolving the culture right.
Okay, guys, any more questions? I know everyone is very impatient to start drinking again, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of offline questions, but any final question? Otherwise, we'll maybe conclude. Rajinder, you wanted to ask something?
No, I was saying we spoke of finance, people, sales. We didn't speak of marketing. Both of you are building consumer brands. Can you share a little bit of just the learning on building enduring brands? Like you'll spend a lot of money, building the brand over the last few years. Any learnings you can share for the group?
I think we make it like it's a rocket science, and while it's not. And brands are finally, it's an idea. It's something that you build in the minds of people. You don't build in D2C. You don't build on TV. You don't build in, it's what you stand for in someone else's mind, and is what the brand stands for. And of course, there are distinctive identities which will remind them of, okay, this is that brand. And, but finally, you stand for an idea in the mind of the people. And if you want to stand for that idea, you have to be consistent, you have to be clear, and you have to stand for certain values that the other person relates with. And those values in our case could be sustainability, could be clean and goodness, could be, some of the other things that we have been consistently talking about. But finally, it's as simply about an idea, and I actually, talk about this often, is the best way to think about brands is to think about humans. And, how would you build your credentials in a room full of these 100 people that you've entered? And the fact that you're here today and you don't know 90% of the people, and the first thing that you would probably do is just go say, hi, I am, XYZ, I do. इतने से ज़्यादा आप नहीं बोलोगे, and that's the first phase of brand building. भैया, let's talk to as many people as possible and tell them who you are and what you do. And second phase is when you know a few people and they are willing to talk to you. That's the time when you can have emotional, cultural conversations and go deeper. And so, if you think like that it's just about how you as a human would build a relationship with other human, and that's what brands need to do.
I think I didn't know branding. I'm pretty sure I don't know.
Vikram, anything you want to add?
No, great question. I was reflecting because definitely I don't feel one sense that I know anything about branding per se. I'm fortunate enough that now we have somebody on the team who's an expert. But I think for us, what we focused on intuitively was कि कुछ तो अलग करना है, right? So I think, and गाड़ी बेचने में 4 दिन क्यों लगते हैं? मतलब 1 घंटा, 30 मिनट, 24 मिनट, 15 मिनट, right? I think we focused on that. फिर तुरंत पैसे transfer हो जाते हैं. So I think just the value proposition, because we were in our mind we wanted to just make it very dramatic. And the fact when we explain to people in person, like you said, like it's just the jaw drops. ये genuinely कैसे हो सकता है यार? मतलब it's such a painful exercise to sell a car or buy a car. So I think we just took that and we just kept communicating that. And of course we also had to prove that in the transactions as well. So yeah, I think just, working backwards from saying isko dramatic banate hain, because nahi to customer mere paas aayega kyun, and then just communicate that and work hard to actually bring it to life.
Great. Thank you, guys. I'm going to conclude with that. Firstly, Varun, thank you so much. I think it's no surprise that all of you all have taken your companies to where they are. Hopefully, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, all these companies will be seen as the most respected companies in the country. Thank you for all the insights. Vikram, thank you for keeping it so real. I think it takes real courage to come and share what you shared, and it's fantastic. I think a lot of people always have FOMO seeing all these unicorn headlines. So thank you for keeping it real. And Ashish, as always, thank you for all the blinding insights and the lovely quotes and the example from the world of sports. We've always known you for that, so thank you for staying true to that.